In the Trenches with Ryan Roxie.
That's what I was going to say about live sex and death. Yes, I'm going to talk a little bit about that period of time when live sex and death did form. It was that sort of transitional period, I feel. It was right before, when at the end of hair metal, but the beginning of grunge, I would say, or there's somewhere, and you guys sort of filled such a special void. I mean, the bands and the style of the music, it crossed a lot of cool it ticked genres. A lot of boxes for me. Yeah, it ticked a lot of boxes for me. You had that Chicago Cheap Trick sort of pop sensibility, but you also had from oh wow! Look at that, folks! Look at that. That's Rick Nielsen in the Trenches alumni right on his arm. Is that the bass player of Demol?
No, that's your ex-girlfriend. No, that's Bernie Tormé.
Who is? Tell me who Bernie is.
Bernie Tormé. When he was little, he got the job in Gillan, right? And then when Randy died, he was the guy they called. Do you remember that?
Wow, I did not. I don't know that story.
Before Brad Gillis got the Ozzy gig, the first guy they called was Bernie Tormé.
Wow, can you go back to talking to the tattoo on your arm? I want to go back and interview Bernie, and just you can do the voice of Bernie. So what was it like getting that call, Bernie? It's after the passing of Randy, which was so it was tragic.
Well, Rhoads, mate, it's been
madness, folks. Madness on today's program because we are here with Alex Kane. I knew it would be nothing short of diabolically genius.
Why did he have that guy? And not to bring a downer on anything, but we actually did lose Bernie a couple of years ago, which is why I got this. He was a huge inspiration to me. Like I discovered him through Ozzy, and of course I was a Randy guy. But so then Bernie being and he was kind of like he looked cool and he had cool moves, but he also had chops and stuff. So then I became I was a huge fan, and I bought his albums and I learned the riffs, and like I stole a bunch of stuff from Bernie Tormé. And then he did he was one of the first guys that was making albums independently through like GoFundMe and stuff. Or it wasn't GoFundMe at the time. It was, I think it was Kickstarter or whatever. Yeah, it was Kickstarter because as I hear, this is only what I've heard. And Bernie Tormé is someone that people in England and stuff will know who Bernie Tormé is, but he's an important artist, and I do, hope that everybody will take some time to go investigate how Bernie played. And he was the guy who, after Girl broke up, right? Phil Lewis, Phil Collin, right?
Of course,
remember
yes.
Girl? After Girl broke up, Bernie, who had been out of Ozzy, and Phil Lewis started a band called Tormé with Chris Heilman from Shark Island before there was a Shark Island.
Which is another one of your ticks on the boxes of the bands that you've been in. So look at there's I'm going to get some comments. There's no doubt about it. This asshole didn't know about Bernie's story, but I'm so glad that we've had you, Alex Kane, to clear up the story of Bernie and give
click on the mug.
Yeah.
Dude, he was first of all, he was a really, really great guy, and he helped me make the second Antiproduct album while I was living in England, and we became really, really good friends. And if you're a musician, and either you can back me up on this or you can deny what I'm saying is in any way true, of course, but if you're a musician, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're always the most sort of socially adept, garrulous kind of like, let's go, but we have the ability to put on a certain frame of mind that allows us to communicate. But that doesn't mean when we're kind of just like hanging out by ourselves that where's my entourage? You know what I mean? I'm pretty insular. I'm an only child. I'm happy with my own company. I enjoy the creative process more than anything. So not needing to be social is something that comes naturally to me, but then being able to be social in the right environment, I can do that too. And Bernie was the same way. Like he didn't like people any more than I do, I guess. So we immediately had a kinship, and here was this guy that whose records I would buy, and I would look at the picture and I'd be like, oh, I wonder if I ever get to be buddies with him. And, how amazing would it be? And then, I became friends with him later in his life. And we definitely, and so for Bernie Tormé, again, whom it's Torme, so I do encourage people to go.
Right?
Yeah. Or just, Ozzy's first replacement. He was the guy that learned the Ozzy set on the Walkman on the plane as he was flying over. You know what I mean? So, and it was like a sound check at Madison Square Garden rehearsal,
That's respect, because to fill anything close to Randy Rhoads' shoes at that time, Randy Rhoads obviously a big influence of yours, an influence of mine. We'll get into his name in just a little bit, but yeah, this sort of circles back to Life, Sex, and Death because
as does everything.
Well, you came at that time. The band came about this transitional time in music, and the story goes. Do you feel that you stepped in to the music business in a good time, or you stepped into it during a misstep of time because it was going through this transitional period? How do you look back upon it?
This is exactly how I look back on that. If regardless of when you came out, that's when you came out. You know what I mean? So I am not anti-grunge. You know what I mean? I loved Nirvana and I loved Soundgarden and, elements of Pearl Jam, but, not necessarily as much. Hated Bush, still hate Bush, have nothing but contempt for Bush, I have to admit. So I find nothing wrong with the time. And we literally, when we got our record deal, it was literally the same month that Nevermind came out. Right. So we were right at the crossroads. And somewhere between good fortune and bad luck, what we felt we needed to do to survive came really at a perfect time, because I don't know that the persona of Stanley would have really been taken seriously at any other point in rock and roll history, except at that crossroads when nobody really knew what the hell was going to happen next. You know what I mean? So we were kind of heavy and weird, but none of us had a Z in our name. Thanks to you, by the way.
Thanks to me. But the thing is, I for one, let me counter you with a couple points. I'm a little bit surprised that you were so anti-Bush, being that you were born in the 60s like myself and you grew up in the 70s. So we all had our dad's Playboy magazines. So there was plenty of Bush to go around. But now, hold on. Now, that's my first point. My second point is, coming from Chicago, you guys had a bit of, I would say it wasn't 50-50 Cheap Trick cartoon versus, it was like basically, if you took the cartoonishness out of it and turned it into like this weird Hunter S. Thompson novel and made the character that, but like, completely what the acid trippy, like, then you had 1/4 of that, and then you had 3 kind of the cool rock and rollers. And I remember back in those days, you were pretty much the lead interview that would do most of the talking. So you were, it was a little bit opposite of Cheap Trick in the way that Robin Zander never did, interviews back in those days, even though he was one of the rock star guys. But you being the cute Robin Zander sort of figure, but you were also very well spoken, and you were riding high a little bit because of your, of the whole entire scene. I've seen you front most of the interviews back in those days.
Well, let's see. I mean, okay, so I'm really loath to attach ego to anything just because I think ego destroys. But so let's just assume that I'm not basing this in ego, because I'm not. It was, I was a little bit more experienced than the other guys. You know what I mean? I'd been in more stuff, right? But the exact sequence of events was No Excuse with Lizzie from DeMalls, ex-girlfriends notwithstanding. And then he introduced me to Chris Stan, which is Stanley's real name, is Chris Stan. And he'd always been telling me about, oh, you got to meet my friend Chris. You got to meet him. He's so cool, this, that, and the other thing. And I met him at the very first show, ironically enough. Chris Stan was at the very first show I ever played in my life. Which is No. Actually, no. It was for, No Excuse was in a battle of the bands. There it is again. We should put tattoos.
That photo, Vic?
Well, or the next time, put some tattoos on the face, so at least we know if it's Ryan or myself.
Hello, folks. Roxie here. Thanks for watching the video. And if you liked it, hit the subscribe button or one of the videos around me to watch more. If you'd like to, please leave a comment. If you didn't like the video, maybe you'll forget how to type.